Before the story begin, if you're watching this, you're among the 2% who have chosen to stay. But we need you, all of you, to hit subscribe. Without your support, stories like mine vanish. Stories about secrets, lust, and how one wrong turn burned my life to the ground. Help us keep telling the truth. Now, let me begin. My hands shook the first time Anthony touched me. Not from desire, from fear. Fear that my husband would hear us. Fear that the boy I had watched grow up would destroy me. But let me start earlier. My name is Sandra Miller. I am 34, a homemaker in Lexington, Kentucky. My husband Paul, 42, is a cardiologist. Kind, busy, predictable. We had not touched each other in months. Then came Brian. Brian Carter was everything Paul was not. 28, reckless, a tattooed personal trainer who flirted while spotting me at the gym. Our first kiss tasted like stolen wine. Sweet, dizzying, wrong. We met Tuesdays and Thursdays at the Sunrise Motel, room 9. I felt alive again. Then Anthony arrived. Paul's nephew Anthony, 24, needed a place to stay after losing his job. Lanky, with sharp green eyes and a smirk that lingered too long, he moved into our guest room. I did not notice him watching me. How I dressed up on Tuesdays, how I would return flushed, my lips swollen. Until one Thursday. I had just returned from Brian. Paul was at work. I stood in the kitchen, fixing coffee, when Anthony's voice slithered behind me. Room 9, huh? I dropped the mug. It shattered like my composure. What? He held up his phone, a video of Brian and me in the motel parking lot, his hand gripping my thigh. My blood turned froze. Uncle Paul would cry like a baby if he saw this, Anthony said, stepping closer. But I will delete it. If you let me have what he gets. You are sick, I spat, backing away. He laughed. You are the one cheating. I am just negotiating. When he kissed me, it was nothing like Brian. It was hateful. Hungry. His fingers dug into my hips as I shoved him, tears hot on my cheeks. Fine, I hissed. Once. Then you leave us alone. Anthony smirked. Oh, Aunt Sandra. This is just the beginning. That night, I scrubbed my skin raw in the shower. Paul asked why I was crying. Allergies? I lied. But the worst was yet to come. Guilt tastes like cheap wine. I drank it every time Anthony's hands were on me. But the thrill? The thrill was a drug. And I was already addicted. The first time I let Anthony into my bed, I told myself it was survival. Paul had left for a medical conference in Chicago. The house felt too quiet, too heavy. Anthony cornered me in the laundry room, his breath hot on my neck. Uncle's gone. No excuses tonight. I did not fight. Not when he unbuttoned my blouse. Not when he whispered, "You are better at this than Brian." Afterward, I stared at the ceiling, numb. Anthony lit a cigarette, the glow burning like a warning. Same time tomorrow, he said. It wasn't a question. Brian noticed. Of course he noticed. We met at Sunrise Motel the following Tuesday. He pinned me to the wall, his usual playfulness sharpened into anger. You're late. You're distant. What the hell is going on? I kissed him, hard, to shut him up. But he pulled back, eyes narrowed. Is there someone else? Don't be ridiculous, I hissed, clawing at his shirt. He yanked my wrist. I am not stupid, Sandra. You smell like him. My heart stopped. Him who? Cigarettes. Cheap cologne. Who is he? I laughed, desperate. You are paranoid. But Brian wasn't fooled. He left me standing there, half-dressed, the door slamming like a gunshot. Paul returned home quieter, distant. That night, as I chopped vegetables for dinner, he lingered in the kitchen doorway. You have been distracted, he said softly. The knife slipped. Blood bloomed on my fingertip. Work stress? I lied, sucking the wound. He bandaged my hand, his touch clinical. I am here if you need to talk. When he kissed my forehead, I almost crumbled. Almost. Anthony grew bolder. He would brush against me while Paul read the paper. Whisper, tonight during family dinners. Once, he slipped a hand under my skirt while Paul grilled burgers on the patio. I hated him. But hate, I learned, can feel a lot like want. One afternoon, he trapped me in the garage. I want more, he growled, backing me against Paul's SUV. More what? You. Everywhere. The couch. The kitchen. His bed. I slapped him. He laughed, gripping my throat just enough to sting. Or should I text Uncle Paul right now? His phone glowed, a draft message to Paul. Ask Sandra about room 9. I said yes. Always yes. That Friday, I came home from the grocery store to raised voices. Not your business. Anthony snarled. You're living under my roof. Paul shouted. I froze in the foyer, bags slipping from my hands. Are they arguing about me? Then Paul's voice, cold and clear. Stay away from Sandra. There are 2 kinds of lies. The ones you tell others, and the ones you tell yourself. I was drowning in both. Flashback. The first sin. It started with a flat tire. 6 months before Anthony moved in, my minivan stalled on a rainy Tuesday. Brian pulled over in his black Jeep, smirking under a hoodie. Need help, ma'am? He changed the tire in 3 minutes flat. When I offered cash, he shook his head. Buy me coffee instead. We met at Starbucks. He talked about his divorce, his tattoos, his restless hands. I talked about Paul's late nights, the silence in our bed. 2 weeks later, Brian pinned me against his Jeep in the gym parking lot, rain soaking through my yoga pants. You are gonna ruin me, I breathed. Yeah, he grinned. But you will love it. Anthony was nothing like Brian. Brian made me feel wanted. Anthony made me feel owned. He would text me photos, my lipstick on his collar, my earring on Paul's pillow. Once, he left a hickey where my necklace could not hide it. Marked, he said. So you don't forget who is in charge. I started locking my bedroom door. Paul joked, afraid of burglars? Yes, I said. But the thief was already inside. My best friend Sharon knew. Of course she knew. We drank Pinot Noir on her porch one sticky afternoon. You are gonna get caught, she said, swirling her glass. Men like Anthony? They don't stop. They escalate. He is just a kid, I lied. She slammed her drink down. A kid who set his high school girlfriend's car on fire when she dumped him. Look it up. My phone buzzed. Anthony, come home. Brian's Jeep exploded on a Thursday. Not literally. But the engine died in the middle of Main Street, smoke pouring from the hood. He called me, frantic. Somebody cut the brake lines, Sandra. I could have died. Ice filled my veins. Anthony. I confronted him that night in the garage. He was polishing Paul's golf clubs, whistling. You tried to kill him. I screamed. He turned slowly, eyes glinting. Proof? You are a monster. He grabbed my waist, lips grazing my ear. You made me this way. The gym bag. Paul found it on Sunday. I had hidden Brian's gym bag under spare blankets in the trunk. His spare shirt, his protein shakes, his cologne. Stupid. Paul lifted it out, confused. Since when do you lift weights? It is Sharon's. I blurted. She's seeing someone. Asked me to hide it. He frowned, sniffing the shirt. Smells like a man. Sharon's. Experimental. He stared at me. For a heartbeat, I thought he knew. Then he shrugged. Tell her to be careful. That night, as I tossed in bed, my phone lit up. Brian, we need to talk. I know about the nephew. The first time I cheated, I cried. The 100th time? I barely blinked. But nothing prepared me for the sound of Brian's fist pounding on my front door. Brian's text, I know about the nephew, burned through me like acid. I called him, trembling in the pantry where Paul couldn't hear. It is not what you think, I whispered. You are screwing your husband's family? Brian hissed. Meet me tomorrow. Noon. Or I swear to God. Fine. Just do not do anything stupid. Anthony found me there, tears smudging my mascara. He laughed. Trouble in paradise? Brian knows. About us. He shrugged, biting into an apple. So? Let Paul find out. Then you will be mine. I slapped the fruit from his hand. You will ruin everything. He grabbed my wrist, voice low. You already did that. Paul left for golf that Saturday. Anthony cornered me in his study, bookshelves looming like judges. Uncle's desk, he said, unzipping his jeans. Now. No, I said, but my body betrayed me. The thrill was poison. The guilt was worse. We were halfway through when Paul's phone rang on the desk. Dr. Miller speaking, blared the voicemail. Brian's voice. Paul, it's Brian. We need to talk about Sandra. Call me back. I froze. Anthony didn't. Stop. I shoved him, scrambling to erase the message. He smirked, buttoning his shirt. Better hurry. Your boyfriend's on a warpath. Sharon ambushed me at the mall. She looked furious, shoving a newspaper clipping in my face. Anthony James Miller, she read. Arrested at 19 for aggravated assault. His ex-girlfriend needed stitches, Sandra. The photo showed a younger Anthony, smirking in a mugshot. He is dangerous, Sharon said. Leave. I can't, I whispered. Paul will. Paul will live. You want if Anthony snaps. My phone buzzed. Anthony, where are you? Uncle's asking questions. Paul was waiting when I got home, Anthony leaning against the fireplace like a predator. Brian called me, Paul said, holding up his phone. Said it is urgent. Care to explain? He is. Stalking me, I blurted. Paul blinked. What? At the gym. He kept flirting. When I rejected him, he got angry. Threatened to make up lies. Anthony fake gasped. That is messed up, Uncle. Paul hugged me, his heartbeat steady against my ear. I will file a restraining order. Over his shoulder, Anthony licked his lips. At midnight, the doorbell rang. Paul opened it. Brian stood there, wild-eyed, holding a photo of Anthony and me in the garage. Ask your wife what we really are, he said. They say hell is fire. They are wrong. Hell is silence. The silence after Paul looked at that photo and whispered, explain. Brian shoved the photo into Paul's hands, Anthony and me, half-dressed in the garage, his teeth on my shoulder. Paul's face paled. Anthony lunged at Brian, snarling. You ruined everything. They brawled on the porch like animals, Brian's fist cracking Anthony's nose, Anthony slamming Brian's head into the doorframe. I screamed for them to stop, but Paul just stared at me. How long? He asked, voice cracking. The truth spilled out. Brian. Anthony. The blackmail. The motel. Paul sank to his knees, clutching his chest. I am a cardiologist, he laughed bitterly. I fix hearts. But I couldn't fix yours. Anthony fled that night, blood dripping from his split lip. Brian disappeared, too, blocked my number, quit the gym. Paul packed my suitcase while I sobbed on the bedroom floor. I loved you, he said. But you? You are just empty. I drove to a motel off Interstate 75. The same chain Brian and I used. Room 12. 2 weeks later, nausea hit. I bought a test at a gas station, hands shaking. Positive. I laughed until I choked. Was it Paul's? Brian's? Anthony's? The phone rang. Paul's number. I answered, desperate. Paul, I am. It is Sharon, she cut in. Paul's in the hospital. Anthony came back. They fought. Paul collapsed. The motel TV buzzed with news. Local man Anthony Miller arrested for assault and attempted arson. I muted it, staring at the test. 2 lines. 1 future. I dialed Brian. He answered on the first ring. Sandra? I hung up. I sit here now, recording this, my hand on my stomach. If you're judging me, good. I deserve it. But if you're still watching without subscribing, you're worse than I am. This story ends here. But yours doesn't. Smash that like button. Share it with someone you hate. And subscribe, because without you, the next Sandra gets no warning. Goodbye.